What do you think happens when a bunch of Donald's most sycophantic loyalists who actually do not believe that they can do anything wrong, who believe that they can do whatever they want and Donald will have their backs and fuck everybody else, right? What happens when those people get together in a group chat and it turns out they don't understand basic security protocols? Well, apparently, what actually did happen is while they're discussing very highly classified top secret stuff, like Pentagon stuff, they accidentally invited a journalist to join their chat without realizing it. I mean, I know it's hysterical, but it's actually not a joke. This actually happened. And this is exactly what happened. On March 15th, the United States launched coordinated airstrikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. Remember, this was ordered by Donald, the guy who hates war and blamed President Joe Biden for being a warmonger and promised all of the American people that he was going to get us out of all the wars. That fucking guy. Well, 2 hours before the first bomb dropped, the editor-in-chief of the Atlantic magazine knew the attack was coming. Why did this happen? Well, because aforementioned group of total idiots using an unsecured chat group were discussing very classified war plans and accidentally invited the reporter. I mean, who else? Did they invite anybody else? We don't know. Did they invite Vladimir Putin? Did they invite Kim Jong-un? Did they invite Ted Bundy? Or, hopefully, luckily, maybe Ted Bundy's ghost was too busy collecting Social Security to care. Yeah, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, texted the plan to bomb Yemen along with the exact weapons, the targets, and the timeline to the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg. The group proceeded with the plan as shared, and Goldberg was observing all of this in real time during the launch of the attacks. Officials celebrated the bombing's quote-unquote success, because there was collateral damage, and they love that, in that same chat, totally unaware that they had shared classified intelligence with a member of the press. Not only was this done on Signal, a commercial encrypted app that is not cleared for any classified communication, they did it in a group chat, and this is problematic, that also included J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Tulsi Gabbard, and Stephen Miller. All right, let's stop there for a second. J.D. Vance, unfortunately, is Vice President of the United States of America. Tulsi Gabbard, unfortunately, is the Director of National Intelligence. She's in charge of all of the agencies, including the Department of Defense, which is mind-blowing because she's a Russian asset referred to as Putin's girlfriend in Russia by Russian media. Marco Rubio is Secretary of State. I'm not entirely sure what his role here is, actually. Pete Hegseth, that makes sense because, unfortunately, he is the Secretary of Defense. And then, you know who else was there? The little Nazi, Stephen Miller. What the fuck was Stephen Miller doing in this meeting? What business does he have having anything to do with our military's plans to bomb another country? Stephen Miller, I thought, was in charge of making people's lives miserable here. Which, by the way, is bad enough because, again, he's a little Nazi. He is a sociopath. He has no human feelings whatsoever. What was he doing there? But no, instead, they're chatting over this unsecured channel like they're trying to figure out who's bringing beer to the party Stephen Miller is holding in his parents' basement because he's such a fucking incel. Okay. But they accidentally add Jeffrey Goldberg's name, the aforementioned journalist. Does this make you feel secure? Are you guys happy that these reprobate, irresponsible, unqualified people are running everything? That these are the people, seriously, this little group of just the worst people among us. Well, all of the worst people in this government couldn't fit in such a small chat. But seriously, these people do not have our best interests at heart. Does it make you feel comfortable that the 5 of them, plus, of course, Jeffrey Goldberg, who had nothing to do with it because he was at it accidentally and was just watching horrified, while our government is literally letting him in on what should be our most closely guarded secrets? They're planning a war on signal. And then it actually happened. Before we dive in further, please take a second to subscribe. We are this close to getting to 350,000 subscribers. Thank you. Of course, because he's a sane human being who understands how things are supposed to work, Jeffrey Goldberg did not believe it was real at first. Because who would? But the chat actually looked legitimate. Everybody was using first names. They were texting back and forth about strategy, timelines, messaging, and of course, how to make Europe pay for it. Why? Because Donald's so cheap, he actually thinks that money we pay for things is coming out of his pockets. J.D. Vance argued that attacking now would hurt Donald's narrative about Europe's freeloading, which is interesting. Stephen Miller, the little Nazi, chimed in saying that Donald had already given the green light, and Pete Hegseth talked about praying for victory. Stephen Miller, okay, I cannot get over this, and you shouldn't get over this either. All of these people, and I'll get to this in a second, should not be in their positions. All of them should be in prison. The fact that Stephen Miller has anything to say about any of this in official channels, well, not exactly official channels because it's illegal, but among this group of people who actually do have authority, which is our problem and to our everlasting shame. And guess what? Guess who had the last word here? Stephen Miller. And as for Pete Hegseth praying for victory, fuck off. All right, then came the confirmation. Just after Hegseth texted a team update detailing when the first missiles would land, they actually did. On time, on target, and, as mentioned, with casualties. Quote, at about 1:55, I checked Twitter and searched Yemen. Explosions were then being heard across Sana'a, the capital city, said Goldberg, recounting his time sitting in a supermarket parking lot as he saw the news. That is how the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic found out he was watching a real-time war briefing that he was never supposed to be part of. And neither was Stephen Miller. I would rather have people like Jeffrey Goldberg on communications like that. And I'm very glad that we have a legitimate journalist to tell us what is going on in this insane excuse for a government that is currently running our country into the ground. At today's press conference, just moments after the story broke, Donald was given the opportunity to own that mistake, and we all know how that usually goes. Let's watch the clip.
Reaction to the story in The Atlantic that said that some of your top cabinet officials and aides had been discussing very sensitive material through Signal and included an Atlantic reporter for that. What is your response to that?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
The Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis?
Yes.
Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective, I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time. Anybody else?
Is anybody else sick of this treasonous bullshit? I mean, seriously. I knew before I saw the clip that the first words that were going to come out of that fucking moron's mouth were, I don't know anything about it. Oh, yeah. Why? You're not the commander-in-chief? Well, wouldn't that be nice? We have evidence. What, you think that Stephen Miller was lying to us because he's so trustworthy, that you gave him the green light to go ahead with the attack, which apparently our Secretary of Defense thought was enough. All we need to know is that Stephen Miller said that you said it was okay. But also, you know what? I wouldn't trust Stephen Miller farther than I could throw him. I need another analogy there, though, because he's very tiny and I could probably throw him very far. But I don't trust him at all. You know whom I trust less? You, Donald. I don't trust you at all. And I couldn't throw you very far. Okay, let's break this down. The group used Signal, not a government-approved system. That's all we need to know about that. It's not secure. It's not approved. It is definitely not approved for classified government communications. Some of the messages were set to disappear because you can do that on Signal. Wonder why? And not just disappear, but like really disappear. Not searchable. You cannot find them. National security lawyers say it likely violated the Espionage Act. Senator Chris Coons, Democrat of Delaware, a member of the Senate Foreign Services Committee, just wrote this on Twitter in case you weren't feeling freaked out enough. Quote, every single one of the government officials on this text chain has now committed a crime, even if accidentally, that would normally involve a jail sentence. We can't trust anyone in this dangerous administration to keep Americans safe, unquote. Yeah, that's how serious this is. And here's the former Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, explaining further.
With former Defense Secretary and former CIA Director Leon Panetta.
Well, it's obviously a very serious mistake on the part of whoever included Goldberg in this highly classified chain of command messaging that went on that involved war plans. To have had somebody from the Atlantic on that chain, without question, was a serious mistake. And I hope the White House takes this seriously, because the last thing you want to do when you're talking about war plans is to have a serious leak like this that could undermine the war plans, but also jeopardize lives. So,
come on, guys. Come on, please stop it. We need a new paradigm. It was a mistake. The White House needs to take this seriously. Are we kidding here? Can we stop it? Can we stop it with setting up false expectations? They don't care. I'm not sure how many times I have to say that. These people feel like they are above everything. Why? Because they're bosses. And he'll let them off the hook, no matter what they do, as long as it's in service to him. As long as it's what he wants them to do, as long as he approves, no matter how illegal, no matter how treasonous, no matter how many people get killed, and people are going to keep getting killed until we start waking up and take this shit seriously. There is no better here. There is only worse. It wasn't a mistake. They don't care. They're going to do whatever they want to do. And Donald will cover for them as long as he's covering for himself. Remember back in 2016, Donald Trump wanted to lock Hillary Clinton up for using a private email server. Hillary Clinton, who was arguably, well, I'm going to say inarguably, the most qualified candidate for the presidency of the United States in American history, was vilified by Jim Comey on down because she used a private email server for some of her email communications. It was a nothing. And the piling on of corporate media, the piling on of Republicans, the piling on of Donald Trump was disgusting, and it changed everything. That election hinged on many, many things, all of which broke Donald's way, because that's just the way it always goes for him. But you can say that close to the election, that was the one thing that let him sneak his way into the White House, to our also eternal shame. And now here we are, because it keeps happening. Now his own national security team is casually texting war plans over an unsecured channel and accidentally inviting journalists and God knows who else, and setting their messages to vanish so they can't ever be caught and held accountable. This is the same guy, Donald Trump, again, who called for the imprisonment of his political opponent who did absolutely nothing wrong, who he himself was indicted for, you know what, not for mishandling classified documents, for stealing them from the American people when he no longer had any right to them whatsoever. And we do not know what he did with those documents. We do not know if he sold them to the highest bidder. We don't know. All we know is they're all back at Mar-a-Lago now. I guess his transactions hadn't been completed. What makes it worse? Why don't we know? Not because the charges were dropped after the election in November 2024. No, the charges never went anywhere because one of the most corrupt judges in American history, who was appointed by Donald, let this case go nowhere. She protected him at every step of the way. She blocked the prosecution at every step of the way, fully confident that if it came to this, the Supreme Court, the corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court, would have her back and his back. Yes, Aileen Cannon, I'm talking about you, Donald's personal pocket judge. Why? So you too can get a seat on the corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court someday? Well, guess what? It probably is going to work for you because that is all Donald wants. The most corrupt people, the most viciously stupid, compromised people doing his bidding for him. And if you're part of that, well, then guess what? You're traitors too. So that leaves the rest of us to figure this out. That leaves the rest of us sitting here every day, watching as things get worse and worse and worse. Because I've said this before, there's no such thing as worst. These people are capable of anything. We need to drop all pretense that there is any hope that they will see the error of their ways. They revel in the error of their ways. And it is up to us to pay attention and make sure that everybody knows just how much damage these people, these corrupt, viciously stupid, sociopathic people are doing to what is left of the United States of America. Please take a second and like and share this video. Be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.